Right, welcome back to Inclusive Design 24 2022, brought to you in partnership with our Platinum supporters, Intopia and Fable, and our Gold supporters, Barrier Break, TPGI, and UX for the Win. You can follow us on Twitter at ID24Conf. If you have any questions, post them on YouTube in the live chat for our Q&A at the end of the session. Now I'm delighted to be joined by my good friend Jens Kochthuis, who's co-hosting with me for this session. Jens, over to you.
Thanks, Patrick. And I'm just handing it over to Lorna Moore, who is next talking about design on the spectrum, creating a more inclusive workplace. The floor is yours, Lorna.
Thank you so much, Jens and Patrick. And thanks everyone for joining me for Design on the Spectrum, creating a more inclusive workplace at Inclusive Design 24. A quick disclaimer before I start, I'm recovering from the flu, so I have lots of tea, smoothies, and cough drops prepared to support my voice throughout the talk. Thanks for bearing with me on this. So I'm Lorna Moore. I'm a Principal Design Program Manager and Accessibility Lead. I'm passionate about creating inclusive, accessible products and services. I'm also on the spectrum and physically disabled. My experiences have changed the way I look at the world and how I interact with and help other people. Those experiences are why creating a more inclusive workplace matters so much to me. And today I'll share my experiences, what I've learned along the way, and how you can create a more inclusive work experience. I'll start with my journey, from my experiences with inclusivity as a child to an adult in the workplace. Then I'll discuss how I shifted my focus in my career, the importance of self-awareness, and how to adapt to challenges you're facing. I'll demonstrate how you can help others by creating a more inclusive, safe place at work, and how I've done this with my team. And to wrap things up, I'll share what I'm doing to drive change in my company and how you can get started too. I've always been a little bit different from others. As an only child, my best friends were stuffed animals, and I liked it that way. In this photo, I'm a very happy baby snuggling a bright pink stuffed unicorn on the floor. I loved her and dozens of other stuffed animals so very much. I'd read them books, we've had tea time, I'd even throw them parties. I felt so anxious around other children. I wanted to fit in, but I really struggled to make friends. I felt left out and was typically picked last for activities. I felt safe and included with my stuffed animals. They didn't care if I was quiet and quirky. I could imagine them to be anything I wanted and needed in a friend. As I got older, I continued to stick to myself. I loved animals and still do today. If you see a bright furry black blob, my cat is looking at me and it seems to have some ideas in her head, so she might jump on the desk. Apologies in advance for that. Children joked about my cat obsession and how I preferred them to people, but let's be honest, cats are awesome. In this photo, I'm holding my Siamese cat, Smokey, and I'm dressed up as Sailor Moon, wearing a white sailor's outfit with a bright blue skirt and red bow. Sailor Moon, for those who don't know, is a magical girl superheroine and the main character of the Sailor Moon manga and anime series from the 90s. I loved playing pretend, channeling my inner magical girl to be brave and fierce. Pretending could only get me so far, though. I struggled in just about any social situation, and even though I loved learning, I had a really hard time staying in school. I couldn't make it through most school days. I felt so very sick and had to call family members to pick me up. Doctors said nothing was wrong with me, and I didn't understand why I felt so miserable. I knew I wasn't lying about it, but that's how they made me feel. I spent most of my school days at home. I taught myself how to program, how to build and design websites, including my very first site about space and cats, which you can tell from this photo were quite important to me. And that hobby was why I decided to become a software engineer and got that degree in college. My academic accomplishments landed me on the cover of the university's engineering magazine, along with 3 other students as one of their featured freshmen. College was a bit better than high school because of the flexible schedules, but I continued to struggle. I tried to be more social, but I felt horrible every time I attempted to do so. Not only did I experience the social anxiety, but it made me feel physically ill. I was in the same situation then as in high school. Doctors said there was absolutely nothing wrong with me, so I kept trying to do the best I could. Later in college, I started dating Philip, my partner, and he was honestly my first real friend. He was the first person I could be myself around, and he actually liked me being me. Interacting with him helped me better understand other people and increase my confidence, if only a little bit, in social situations. This confidence helped me land my first job out of college, so we packed our bags and moved to Houston to start our careers. My career has been a mix of highs and lows over the last 10 years. When I started my first job, I was nervous about working with my physical and mental limitations, but I was really excited to start my career. I was in a new job in a new city. I was ready to be a new woman. I survived my first assignment. I planned my entire move around it. I was close to the office building. I had my own private office for much needed focus time, had manageable social interactions, and my team was really nice to me. I felt like I was hitting my stride, that I could have a successful career. I wasn't so lucky during my second assignment. At that time, my supervisor was in control of my career. I had no say over my next assignment, and I got moved to a completely new team and office building, which resulted in an hour commute to the office, and depending on traffic, an hour or more on the way home. To make things even worse, my new team lead, who I really liked, said she felt bad for me because I was too nice to have to work with certain teammates. I was incredibly stressed. I did my best though. Driving has always been difficult for me. I get overwhelmed and motion sick in traffic, and Houston traffic can be a nightmare. I would bring 2 trash bags with me because I'd more than likely need to pull over and throw up on the way to work and on the way back home. When I got to the office, already feeling miserable, I had teammates who straight up refused to work with me, which made getting my work done really hard. I was overwhelmed and unhappy. This was the absolute lowest point in my career. I felt worse than I ever had in my life, both physically and mentally. I didn't know if I would ever be able to work with my disabilities. That confidence that I had when starting my career shattered, and I had to go on medical leave. It was during this low point that I began seeing more doctors in hopes that someone would be able to help me. I feared that they would just tell me nothing is wrong, like doctors did years ago, although some of them did. Other doctors explored further, and I eventually discovered my physical and mental disabilities. My diagnoses were such a relief because I finally understood what was causing me so much pain, and my life finally made sense. I don't consider my disabilities as things that are wrong with me, but understanding my disabilities helps me adapt to life with them. And this was the turning point in my career and honestly, my life. I began working with our internal occupational health teams and discovered my love for design. Human-centered design was just getting started at my company, and I wanted to be a part of it. Not only because I enjoyed it, but because I felt like I could positively impact more people. So I decided to switch careers. I was one of the first user researchers at my company, and I loved it. I was anxious, but really excited. Even though I struggled socially, research was so much different. I went into interviews with a structured plan and actually got to know more about people and their challenges so that we could design for them. Eventually, this led me to getting a job on my dream team, which I'm on today, with some of the best humans I know. And then 2020 happened. When the world turned upside down, my life and work turned right side up. I was happier than ever before because for the first time in my life, my disabilities didn't hold me back as we went fully remote. I wasn't under any pressure to be in the office, and I was much more accommodated from home. I could finally work in a way that worked best for me. Now that leadership expects us to return to the office, I'm focused on improving both my work experience and the experience of others. I'm doing everything that I can to get back to the same accommodations during COVID and convince leaders why it's important. My experiences in my early career are part of the reason why inclusive workplaces matter to me. When I was at my lowest point, I knew that something had to change. I knew that the way that I was working wasn't working for me. I needed to reevaluate my situation. I needed to understand the problems that were making me feel so miserable so that I could potentially resolve them and understand what was completely out of my control. Shifting my focus, embracing my passion, and finding like-minded people at my company was the true start of my career. I collaborated with managers to make my job and environment more accommodating and began to do the same for others across the company. And that's why I'm excited to share what I've learned during the last few years of my career as I've made changes, considering my personal needs, as well as how to create a more inclusive workplace for everyone at my company. You've probably heard inclusivity starts with you. Be more inclusive by including people who might be otherwise excluded or marginalized. But before you can even think about inclusivity in the context of other people, you need to reflect on yourself. Inclusivity starts with you as a human being. Until you understand your challenges and perspectives, it's difficult to understand other people's. Inclusivity requires self-awareness, both internal and external. Internal self-awareness is how you understand yourself, your values, feelings, strengths, and weaknesses. Effective introspection enables us to understand our own perspectives, and it drives our goals and motivations. It helps uncover the hidden biases that might be holding us back from being more inclusive and effective in our work. External self-awareness is our understanding of how other people view us. Rather than introspection, external self-awareness requires gathering insights from the world around us, helping us make decisions based on facts rather than emotions or assumptions. It requires taking a step back and looking at situations from the vantage point of another person. That builds empathy and increases inclusivity. Self-awareness is a skill, and like any skill, it needs to be developed and strengthened over time. Internal self-awareness begins with introspection, looking at your inner self. It's the observation and analysis of your own mental and emotional processes. To begin introspection, some people recommend asking yourself why you feel a particular way. For me, this can be incredibly difficult to start with because most times I don't necessarily know why I feel the way I do. I just, well, feel it. Instead, I'd recommend starting by asking yourself what you feel during particular situations. What am I feeling right now? What am I experiencing as I'm presenting this talk to you? A little nervous, especially with my voice right now, but excited. You need to observe what you feel, both physically and emotionally first, before you analyze why you feel that way. And once you understand why, you can start thinking about how to make a change and shift focus. To reflect on my experiences, I like to use the rose, thorn, bud design thinking technique. Some teams use this technique for retrospectives, but it's also incredibly useful for introspection too. You can use it to reflect on a particular event, day, week, month, and so on. Here's how it works. You start with your rose, what you consider beautiful during the time frame you're reflecting on. This could be an accomplishment, highlight, or something positive that happened. I ask myself, what am I proud of? Or even, what am I happiest about? The next step is identifying your thorn, those sharp pointed projections of the rose stem. In this case, an obstacle, challenge, or something you struggled with. I'll ask, what was difficult? What stressed me out? And the last part of this exercise is defining the bud. Every rose starts as a bud. Buds can be an opportunity, new idea, or something you hope to achieve or do. I like to focus on what could improve, what needs a little bit more growth and nurturing. This section always takes me a little bit more time than the others because I have to think about improvement opportunities rather than what worked well or not so well. It's also important to note that you aren't defining how to fix a problem in this section, you're just defining a potential opportunity. What I love about this technique is that it can be adapted to different situations and used by anyone. You can use it for introspection, but you could also use it for team retrospectives or even with kids to reflect on their days at school. You can also reframe this exercise as I like, I wish, I wonder by considering what worked well that could be better and what you might want to pursue next. Either approach is a fantastic way to reflect on your experiences. After you've considered what you feel, you can start diving deeper, reflecting on why you feel the way you do and how to overcome obstacles. Reflecting on my personal experiences this year, 2022 has been a big year for me. I became a principal design program manager, the first in my discipline at my company, and I finally got the courage to share I'm on the spectrum after 10 years of pursuing my career. The response has been incredible, and I'm really proud of both of those things. I'm also proud that I'm sharing my experiences with others, like I'm doing with you today at Inclusive Design 24. I've had challenges though. This year, I struggled adapting to post-pandemic return to work guidance versus personal, mental, and physical needs. That's a big opportunity though. I've made progress creating a more inclusive, accommodating space for my team, and I hope to make it even better. I also hope that sharing my experiences and the challenges people with disabilities at my company face will help influence internal policies. And that's what I want to focus on next. I realize that some things will be out of my control, but I've identified what I hope to achieve and reflected on why it matters to me. I've made a lot of progress with my team, and I have a plan to help make things even better. To consider and help other people, like your teammates, you need to reflect on the world around you. That requires reflecting on situations from the vantage point of another person and considering other people's point of view. Considering other people's point of view builds empathy and increases inclusivity. If you're like me, that can be uncomfortable, but that's a good thing. Inclusion strategist Ruchika Toshan acknowledges that being uncomfortable is the first step towards inclusiveness in her book, Inclusion on Purpose. It's a really incredible book, and I would definitely recommend checking it out. She created the Bridge framework to approach cultivating an inclusion mindset. First, expect and accept that you will be uncomfortable. Understand your feelings of uncertainty, discomfort, frustration, and fear, along with your biases. That's the first step in creating a more equitable, inclusive workplace. It's why I recommend starting with introspection, creating internal self-awareness first, and shifting focus to improvement opportunities. I love this quote from Inclusion on Purpose, that you need to be humble and willing to be imperfect. In fact, if you aren't facing some level of discomfort when it comes to learning about inclusion in the workplace, assume you're not learning enough. Learning is crucial for addressing bias and inclusion at work. And that requires reflecting on what you don't know. I've talked a good bit about reflecting on yourself, but you also need to reflect on the experiences of other people and the challenges they face. I recommend starting with areas of exclusion and bias that you're already familiar with or passionate about in the workplace. And for me, that's my experiences designing on the spectrum and making the workplace more accommodating for people with similar challenges. I understand my perspective, but I should also consider other people's perspectives too. Ask yourself, what perspectives am I missing that may hold me back from being fully inclusive? What do I need to learn more about? What haven't I spent time considering? And how will I learn more? For me, taking the time to listen to other people and learn about their experiences is really important so that you can better understand their challenges. That could be a one-on-one conversation or a group discussion with your teammates in a safe space where people feel comfortable sharing their thoughts and emotions. One-on-one conversations or coffee chats may take time, but I personally find them to be the most effective for my work because people are often more open in those conversations with me. Another way I've gone about learning what I don't know is with engagement surveys. I used this approach when I was the global lead for an internal design community. One of the questions I asked was how much people agreed with the statement, "I feel like I belong in the design community." Last year, 55% of respondents strongly agreed with that statement, compared to 32% who agreed, 8% who were neutral, and 5% who disagreed. Clearly, there was and still is room for inclusivity. I gave participants the option to be anonymous or share their contact information at the end of the survey so that I could follow up with them to learn more about their experiences. Engagement surveys also invite feedback, in this case, how we can make our community more inclusive. I followed up with members of our community to understand what was going well for those people that strongly felt they belonged, and to understand how we could improve and be more inclusive. Sorry about that, needed more tea. One of the biggest learnings was that many people felt our community was primarily for design professionals, but most of our community members are not in design roles. They want to apply design in a different role, like software developers or engineers. So we shaped our community strategies and events to better consider their perspectives and encourage participation. Inviting feedback on yourself, especially if you have perpetuated bias or weren't inclusive, is even more challenging. But you should do it anyway, because it enables you to be more inclusive and grow as a person. I welcome feedback from anyone at my company, whether it's on an experience I've designed or how I present myself. Being on the spectrum has its challenges, especially when it comes to interacting with others, and my team looks out for me. For example, recently a teammate approached me to let me know how I did well with eye contact during a meeting with a senior leader because she knows it's something that I'm working really hard on. I appreciate hearing constructive feedback too, and that's why I'm so thankful for my partner, because he is willing to give it to me straight how my behaviors could impact other people. To invite feedback from others, I'd recommend asking how and what questions, like, what can I do to make you feel more included? How can I create a more inclusive space for our team? What could I do better now and in the future? Sometimes you may get vague responses, but I encourage you to dig deeper with follow-up questions like, how can I do that? Or what would that look like to you? It's also important that you don't get defensive. If the response isn't good, it's important to hear that now so that you can do something to improve. Each person's experience may be different, so get feedback from multiple perspectives to better understand improvement opportunities and cultivate both an inclusion and growth mindset. No one is perfect. Everyone has room to improve and grow from their mistakes. Being inclusive is a skill that takes time, energy, and practice. By consciously working to improve, you can be more inclusive and be an example to others. I've made many mistakes throughout my career, and recently I made a small one that had a big impact on one of my teammates. As part of my work as an accessibility lead, I set up a team group chat on an internal platform to discuss ideas to make our experiences more accessible. I thought, yes, this is a fantastic idea for asynchronous communication. Most of the team posted actively, but one teammate didn't post at all. I later found out my team group chat was inaccessible on screen readers, and my blind teammate couldn't read or communicate with us on it. I'd unintentionally been leaving him out of our conversations. I made a mistake, but I learned from it. I immediately changed our primary communication method to emails because he said it was easier for him to interact and engage with everyone that way. This made our team conversations more inclusive, and I also grew from this experience. It was a reminder to make sure that I consider accessibility and people across ability levels before making a decision, even what may seem like a small one. I need to make sure that I don't leave anyone out. And changing your approaches and habits, even small ones, takes time. And when it comes to changing teams and organizations, that takes even longer, and you need to expect that. Creating an inclusive workplace and working towards a greater goal is hard. It's important for you to plant the flag wherever you want to go and expect that journey to take time. As a community lead, my team's goal was to create a social experience around shared values that anchored people's identity and design. We wanted our community to be global, to represent our locations around the world. But we launched in the US, where most of our designers were back in 2015. We started small with a handful of designers and non-designers like myself who were passionate about design. We dreamed big though. We wanted to spread this design mindset across the company and include people around the world. When we launched our global design course, we established local communities of practice and encouraged class attendees to join them for hands-on opportunities to practice design and connect with community members. We knew scaling design would take time, but we planted a long-term flag with short-term goals to demonstrate progress towards a more inclusive community. That mindset helped us grow from a handful of people in the United States to over 30 countries now, with hopes to expand even more this year. Welcoming anyone in our community, regardless of their expertise, background, or location, helped create an inclusive environment and accelerate this movement where people felt safe to apply design, and including people around the world was crucial for our success. The bridge framework that I shared earlier helps drive change by connecting people, like we did with the design community, to create more inclusive experiences. With the design community, we started small, but dreamed big. We still have a ways to go, but we've made so much progress over the last few years. And even last week, we had an internal design conference, and we had over 1,000 new attendees, which was really incredible. In my new role as a principal design program manager, I want to make my team more inclusive, but I hope to improve policies to make the workplace even more inclusive and accommodating for people with disabilities. I've worked closely with my manager to make our team more inclusive, and many of my teammates are passionate about that too. Because I'm on a global team, one of the things that I've been working on is translating in-person experiences to digital so that people can be included and have the same experience. That includes team building activities like Dungeons and Dragons to teach people the power of storytelling and yes and. Why not play a role-playing game to spark creativity and help others channel their inner unicorn? I've translated the way my team plays together around the world with virtual D&D. Because we had an enterprise account, I actually created these character sheets in Mural and leveraged maps from my favorite Patreon artist. People can move their character tokens around in Mural and hang out virtually on a Zoom call. Steps like these may seem small, but they're the first steps in creating a more inclusive workplace. I'm also considering larger opportunities where I have the potential to influence the wider corporation. In the same spirit of starting small, I've been working with my management to be more inclusive and accommodate my physical and mental disabilities. As I mentioned at the start of my talk, I'm trying to get back to the same accommodations and flexible work arrangements that we had a couple of years ago. My dream scenario is that I could officially work from home because I'm more productive, healthier, and happier. It's not something that's in my manager's control, so I have to convince senior leaders that it's important. I need to build a bridge, forming connections with people across the company, not only to help myself, but to potentially help so many other people who have disabilities. I've made some progress, but there's still quite a ways to go. I'm optimistic that we will make progress, even if it will take time. Whether you're interested in driving change on an individual, team, or company-wide level, I'd love to connect and collaborate with you. You can reach out to me on my LinkedIn at bit.ly/Lona Moore, and my contact information is also on the Inclusive Design 24 website. And with that, I'd like to thank you for joining today's talk, bearing with me with all of my breaks to drink tea and the coughing as I recover from the flu, but I've really enjoyed sharing this with you. You can connect with me, like I mentioned, on LinkedIn at bit.ly/Lona Moore, and you can access the slides for this presentation at bit.ly/design on the spectrum if you would like to reference it later. And I will hand it over to Jens and Patrick for Q&A.
Thank you, Lona. That was a great and inspiring talk. Let's see if we can add some questions. You told us that that you on some occasion learned about the inaccessibility of one of your tools because your blind colleague couldn't understand anything. Were the other collaboration tools you used accessible for him or for all of you?
So that's a really great question. One of the things that I've been doing as we've started up this new accessibility branch for one of the employee resource groups that I'm a part of as the accessibility lead is bringing in more accessible tools for our company. And so I'm working with him as well as other members of our accessibility committee to bring that in. One of the things that was part of the challenge for that internal tool is that our screen reader software was out of date by a couple of years. So that made it even more challenging because we were using an old version. So it's working to get the latest version, make sure that we have continuous updates to that so that people can use our tools. And that's one of the things that it's really important for our accessibility committee is to have people across those ability levels, because I would have never known that because I don't use the screen reader. Now I've gotten access to it so that I can test our applications with it, but I'm not a user of those tools. So I'm glad to have someone that can share their perspective and their experience so that we don't have those problems with some of the things that we use.
But in this case, it's easy to solve because it's in your hand. It's in the hand of your in the hand of a company to get the latest version of the screen readers. But I'm always struggling with tools like Mural myself, and I'm not blind, so I'm just thinking about if those tools we are now more and more using aren't a new kind of barrier for our usage.
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And I think that it's important to also advocate for accessibility for these tools. I know that Mural, for example, has been growing and expanding, and they've recently done a big accessibility push to make their tool more accessible and add in those features. And a lot of that has been driven by their clients and their collaboration with the government, for example, to make that better. And I think that the more that we can get behind these different tools and support what we think they should be and just be an advocate for that, the better, because it does make a difference. Because if you're purchasing it, then you're kind of showing that support for that tool in a way. but demonstrating how it could be better to create a more inclusive space for people and to, of course, get more customers, because the more accessible it is, the more potential customers you have that can use it. And I think that that's really important.
Yeah. And if I understood correct, in the beginning, the Corona was in part good for you because you hadn't to meet other persons face to face the whole week. Just to sum it up in that way. I can relate to that. That's being in home office is super, but not everyone shares this opinion, isn't it? Couldn't it be that some of your colleagues were just hindered by home office because that was what was positive for you was negative for them?
Yeah, that's an excellent point. And one of the things that I really, really push for is working in a way that works best for you as an individual. So for some of my colleagues who happen to have kids in a very distracting environment at home, sometimes it's very nice to go in the office because it's a lot quieter and less to manage. Yeah. So some people are much more productive in the office, and for some specific things, it's much easier to collaborate when you're in that face-to-face situation. For me, as someone who is diagnosed being on the spectrum with ADHD as well as an anxiety disorder, being in the office can be challenging for me, to say the least. So for me, it helped me really focus and have the best year of my career, because I didn't know what that could be, what it was like working from home all the time. And in my performance assessments, it's like, you're doing amazing. You're so productive. It's like, I didn't know I could work this way. This is amazing. And it also, for me, because my team is a global team, it put us all on the same level, because it didn't matter if, I was in Houston or if my teammates in Curitiba or Budapest or just around the world. We were all on the same platform and nobody felt left out. So I think that depending on the situation, you need to consider the different environments and ways of working for folks that work best.
Do you know of other leaders in your other teams in your company that are thinking the same way you did? And
yeah, we're making a lot of progress. A lot of this has been led by fantastic managers. My manager is the best boss I have ever had. Shout out to Nick Cochran. And some of the things that my team has been doing, one of my amazing team members, Emily Danielson, started each month for our team, is a thing called Equity Mornings each month, where we share our different perspectives and how to create a more inclusive, equitable workplace. And that kind of mindset is shared across our different design teams and different approaches to handle that. And I think the more exposure that we get to different teams across the organizations and senior leaders is helping spread that. Like, I've been having a lot of conversations with our occupational health teams as well as our HR professionals to share what I experience in the workplace, because it may be different for me or what other people are experiencing, just so they have a better understanding, so that we can create a more inclusive and safe space for people so that they can be productive and happy with the work that they're doing.
I might actually riff on that last question and also ask, because you gave us a fascinating insight into your company and your workplace. Are you aware, or are you in touch with similar initiatives in other organizations?
So for me, at least as far as organizations in my company, yes. So I'm continuing to reach out to different organizations and go as high up as I can. I feel like every few months I'm making those connections higher and higher up the company, which is great. Also, what we've been doing within our accessibility committee is working with people in different companies to understand kind of how our competitors operate and what they're doing to create more inclusive workplaces. And when you think about retaining and attracting employees, that's really important. So what are other people doing in this space? What are people really passionate about? What do they care for? So we've been participating in conferences and just trying to share learnings so that we can improve the company. And like I said, with companies that have been around a while, it can take a while. Change takes time, but we've got people like me who are really passionate about it. We're making progress, and hopefully we'll continue to spread that across the company.
Excellent. And I think I'm going to ask one more question, a burning question from our crew member, Adrian Rosselli, who's a keen Dungeons and Dragons aficionado. And he's just asking that you mentioned that you're using D&D for team building. And did you find you had to make any accommodations or you had to plan some accommodations? Because we have more than a few gamers probably watching, probably Adrian himself, and they may be interested.
Yeah, so really with any type of team building activity, I plan them based on my team's ability levels. So some people have never played a game like Dungeons and Dragons before, so it's trying to make it something that is fun for complete newbies to the game, as well as when you determine kind of the platform that you're going to use based on your team members, their different ability levels. Think about, is this something that everyone will actually be able to see the screen and interact with the screen in Mural like we did, for example? Or is it going to be purely theater of the mind type of a thing, so that people who may have visual impairments, if they can't see what you're sharing on screen, can they still participate and have that experience? So the way that I structured it is kind of D&D light for the first session. Is I will have them give me a concept of their character, what they would like to do, and then I will shape it. We'll do kind of about half the rules, because if you know D&D, there are a lot of rules. So making it a little easier to delve into it. And then for people who are really excited about it, then we can get real nerdy and nerd out on all of the rules for D&D. But that's kind of how I've approached it. And if you're interested, on my LinkedIn, I have more information about that D&D session with pictures of the mural boards and things like that. And my teammate, Marcia Corrente, also has a post on it from her experience as a player too.
Excellent stuff. Excellent. Right. I think at this point, all that's left to say is thank you very much, Lorna. And from me as well, thank you, Jens, for your stellar co-hosting. And to the audience at home, if you like this session, hit that YouTube like button, and don't forget you can subscribe to the Inclusive Design 24 YouTube channel to be kept in the loop on our future events. A reminder that ID24 is a respectful community, and you can find our code of conduct on the Inclusive Design 24 website. And Inclusive Design 24 would not be possible without the help of our supporters, which this year are Intopia, Fable, Barrier Break, TPGI, UX for the Win, Equal Entry, InfoAxia, Intuit, Law Office of Lainey Feingold, Adrian Rosselli LLC, and Webbable. And Inclusive Design 24 will be back on the hour with our next session, so don't go away and see you there.